Hi everyone, welcome to tonight's Facebook Live. Let me double check that I'm going live and that all is well with that. If you are watching this on my Facebook page, welcome, welcome. If you're watching this on my YouTube, welcome, welcome. And let's see where we're at. Okay, so looks like we're good. So if you're new to my Facebook Lives, my name is Julie Ann Fay, and I'm a professional astrologer and a certified angel card reader. I do Facebook Lives around topics like card pulls, pulling oracle cards, energy, chakras, archangels, and then I also do Facebook Lives around astrology. So if you go to my Facebook business page, you'll see all of the events there. There's my Stars with the Stars series, which is what you're watching one of the videos of. I also do Facebook Lives for the new and full moons. And then I also do what I call Cards for the Collective, which is when I do card messages for everyone. And I change up the theme of how I do that, and I do those every 2 weeks. So sometimes I do pick a card, sometimes I do sign by sign for different zodiac signs. Sometimes I do pull cards for individual people that make it on the live. I like to change it up. So if you're new to my channel or watching my live, definitely leave a comment so that I can know that you're here. Hi, Janae. So good to see you. So good to see you. Happy Halloween. So I am doing a Stars with the Stars, which is one of my celebrity astro chart walkthroughs. And I've done a bunch of these so far. I did various people from I Dream of Jeannie, which is a television show that I love very, very much. Hi, Robin. Good to see you. I'm not sure if I've seen you on my lives before, so definitely let me know also if you're new. But yeah, so I've done several Stars with the Stars celebrity astro chart walkthroughs before. You can see those on my YouTube, which you can actually see linked in the description of this video. If you go here, see more, you guys can see that here. This is the link to my YouTube channel. And yeah, so I've done a few. I have really fun plans for who I want to do in the future with Stars with the Stars. But I felt really called to do somebody very specific for tonight's Halloween night for Stars with the Stars. And that person is Freddie Mercury. He's just such a fun and wild and crazy character. So I felt like he was really appropriate to do for Halloween, to go over his astrology chart. And also he has a really fascinating astrology chart. He's a great example of why you can't judge somebody's astrology based on their sun sign alone. Because I myself, I'm a really strong Virgo, and I was shocked to find out that Freddie Mercury is a Virgo. I don't think that you would expect that, but he has a lot of other influence in his chart that brings in a lot of other energies, so he's not all Virgo. And I was inspired to do Freddie Mercury because I recently, I guess a couple weeks now ago, watched the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, and I really, really loved the movie. I loved the actor that played Freddie Mercury so much. I actually looked up his astrology, and then I was also, of course, inspired to look up Freddie Mercury's astrology. I want to preface, like, I am not an expert on the band Queen. It was definitely, you know, a band that was at its height before I was even born. So I'm just prefacing, I'm not an expert on all kinds of Queen trivia. I know definitely certain things about Freddie Mercury from doing some research, you know, but I'm excited to talk about this from an astrological perspective. And as I've said in previous Stars with the Stars, you know, I look up astrology charts and study them all the time on my own time to deepen and perfect my own practice as a professional astrologer. So this series is really me sharing with you all something that I do kind of on my own, but it serves as a tool for you to also learn astrology. So even though, of course, these are not your astrological charts, you can learn a lot by astrology by watching me do the screen shares and the walkthroughs of the chart. And like I said, I've done a few of those so far. So there's a lot that you can learn. And the more people that I can get on my Stars with the Stars series, the more things I'd like to do working in potentially other people's charts and things like that in different contests and things. I don't know why I can't talk tonight. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, Janae. I definitely leave comments and let me know that you're there, because sometimes I feel like nobody's watching. So that's really comforting to hear that you do watch, vids on my YouTube and that you enjoy them. Oh, wow, Janae, we have a lot of alignment with each other, because happy Halloween too. Thanks, Janae. We have a lot of alignment with each other because my father was actually a Taurus and he passed in 2015, and I'm a Virgo. So I'm just going to pull up the comments here for people watching this on YouTube. Probably have no idea what's going on. I don't know if yeah, I think I can do that. Yeah, so that's a lot of synchronicities, Janae. I didn't realize that. So I'm definitely sorry for your loss. And I feel like it's not an accident that, you're drawn to my work, because there's a lot of synchronicities there. For sure, the same year, the same signs, and so interesting how things kind of work like that. So before I go into the chart, since we have some people on, why don't you guys post in the comments, what are some astrological aspects that you think that Freddie Mercury has? I kind of gave away already his sun sign, that he's a Virgo, but go ahead and leave a comment. What do you think is his moon? What do you think are prominent influences or aspects that he has in his chart? Or if you're really new to astrology, what are some attributes or qualities you would use to describe Freddie Mercury? And we can kind of use that as a way to, kind of inform what I'm going to talk about. I totally understand, Janae. I really do. When somebody in a family leaves, it changes the entire dynamic of the family, and it's really never the same. And there's all different types of reactions that can come from that, so I'm definitely very intimately familiar with what that feels like and, what you're going through and talking about. So I'm not seeing too many comments about what we think Freddie Mercury's aspects are, or different things about his chart. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to push forward, but feel free to drop them in the comments as you're watching this. So when we do astrology, what's really, really fascinating about astrology is that it's multi-layered. It has many different, you could almost say, dimensions to a chart. Nobody is just one note, one astrological sign or feeling. Everybody is a composite of, that's my dog. Everybody is a composite of multiple different types of energies, and this is represented in someone's astrology chart. The way that somebody feels and the composite of energies that somebody's feeling in the day-to-day is often a reflection of, I promise my dog is not as crazy as he sounds. What we're feeling in the day-to-day is often a reflection of, hold on one quick second. I shall be right back. Okay, so often what we're feeling from the day-to-day is a reflection of the transits we're under. So sometimes you'll hear astrologers use these words like natal chart, transits. Natal chart is the astrological chart you were born with. Transits are the current shifting and movement of the planets and how that's personally affecting you. So you could be under a very harmonious transit, like a trine or a sextile, that could be providing positive, fueling energy into your current chart. Or you could be under a more challenging transit, like an opposition, a square, or a conjunction. Conjunctions can go either way, because some conjunctions are not really favorable and others are very favorable. It depends on who's involved, So without further ado, let's dive into Freddie Mercury's astrology. And this is actually Rami Malek, I think is how you pronounce his name. That's the actor that played Freddie Mercury. So time permitting, we'll see how we do. Probably not tonight, but maybe at one point I will do a stars with the stars of his astrological chart if the info is available, and we can kind of, do some comparisons there, which will be really, really fun. Okay, so Freddie Mercury. So he was born on, first I'm going to pull up the Astro theme real quick and just go over a couple of things. Now, I want to preface that this is a wonderful database to find lots of astrological information. However, this database is subjective to whoever puts in the information. I have come across once or twice inaccurate charts based on inaccurate birth times or birth data that was put in. So if you're doing this work on your own, I would encourage that you cross-reference the information you find with other sources. It's definitely happened to me at least once where I've come across a chart that was wrong, because somebody put in a false birthday or something like that. So Freddie Mercury was born on a Thursday, so he was ruled by Jupiter, and his birthday was September 5th, 1946 at 6:30 a.m. He was born in Zanzibar, Tanzania. So even though he spent pretty much all of his life in England, from my understanding, he was born outside of England, which interestingly, if you watch the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, they get into that at the beginning of the movie, kind of some of the discrimination that he had to go through, and I think continued through a significant portion of his career, where people were really at times harsh with him and unkind, because he was kind of like, I'm putting this in air quotes, an outsider, to their perception. So Janae, if you don't know what time you were born, an astrologer can still run your birth chart. It just means that we can't talk about things like your ascendant, your descendant, your midheaven, and your IC. And it also means we can't say the exact placement of your house system. So a chart can still be run, but it just means that we won't have as much detail as we would if we had your birth time. So it's most ideal to have a birth time, and usually that's on your birth certificate, or a lot of times if your mom is still alive, mom knows what time you were born, interestingly. So that's some information about that. So Freddie Mercury was a Sun Virgo, Moon in Sagittarius, Virgo ascendant, and midheaven in Gemini. So here's the Astro theme version of his chart, and I've gone ahead and put this into astro.com. So we're going to do this from astro.com, which is a little bit more precise and accurate to look at charts with. So it's really interesting that he's a Moon in Sag. He's a very late degree Moon in Sag. And when I was looking at the movie and kind of researching about him, I had a feeling that he had Moon in Sag, because people that have Moon in Sag tend to have very prominent teeth, and their mouth tends to be a bit bigger. And he actually was very known for having kind of like a bigger mouth and very large teeth. In fact, I actually read this like scientific study that they did on his vocal cords, and understanding that he actually had like a greater cavity in his mouth, which actually allowed him to have even more vocal range, which is pretty fascinating if you think about that. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that, Janae. So lots of earth energy, though, going on in your family, which is fun. So fun. So yeah, it's really interesting because he's got this, larger mouth, which a lot of times that's actually a very interesting thing about astrology, is that the astrological aspects that someone is born into can actually manifest in the physical body. It's pretty mind-blowing. There's actually certain physical features that you can link to each of the different zodiac signs. And then of course, when you put all these combinations together of things, that's when you get more and more layers, right, of the way that a person looks. It's definitely not the sole reason. There's obviously genetics. There's so much involved with what makes somebody look the way that they do, but it's pretty interesting to think about how astrology shapes the way we look, So yeah, really cool that he was a Moon in Sag, and that some of his physical features reflect that. And if we look here at his chart, so he's a Sun Virgo, and we could see here that his sun is actually pretty much within 2 degrees of his ascendant. So this is a Sun conjunct ascendant, which is an amazing aspect to have, especially if you want to be in the public eye, because this basically means that when people see you, you are illuminated, right? The sun is called a luminary in astrology. It means that it literally illuminates, it provides that bright light on wherever it is in your chart. And people are drawn to you. They feel that like warmth and that life force energy. So he had this very strongly, which is pretty awesome. And I think most of you that have watched videos of him, or even if you just look at the Google images, you can really feel that, you know. It's interesting too, though, because his sun technically would come up in the 12th house, which is a hidden house, a subconscious house, a house ruled by Pisces. So people that are sun in the 12th, in fact, I actually wrote an article that's on my blog. I don't know if I could pull that up right away. Let's see if I can. I wrote an article that's on my blog that you can go read. It's a little bit longer, so I'd recommend do it after this video that you're watching, where I go through having planets in the 12th house, and I go through actually all of the planets: Sun, Venus, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. I go through all of them. So this is a great read, and I also do it inspired with gifts, because they're just a great way to learn, and they're really fun and entertaining. So if you go to my blog, it's a little bit of a longer link, but the link to that is in the description of this video, so you can find it there. You can sign up for my newsletter on the homepage. You can navigate over to the blog, and you can find the blog there. This website I am doing a massive overhaul to, so some of the pages don't have content on them, but the homepage and the blog, you can definitely still go on and look at everything. Oops, I think that's going to link to my YouTube, maybe. I don't know. We'll find out. But anyway, so if you go to my blog, you can look at this post, and you can see I go through having a placement. This is a little sluggish, maybe because I'm streaming for you guys. So you'll get to see me talk about having a planet in the 12th house and what that means according to that planet and all of those things. So it's taking a little bit of time here, but you'll be able to, you know, look through that. I definitely recommend it. And if you're on my blog and you watch, or you know, you read through this and you enjoy it, definitely at the very bottom leave a comment so that I can know that you were here. There's a Facebook plug-in there. You can leave a comment and let me know that you were here and how you enjoyed it. I'd love to find out, you know, how that was for you. So let's pop back over to his chart. So we've got this sun in the 12th house. So actually he carried a very spiritual, a very karmic mission this lifetime. He also has Mercury in the 12th house. So normally, you know, you'll see I write about it in the blog that Mercury in the 12th house can definitely contribute to being a little bit slower or more lethargic when it comes to thinking with like facts and information. But because Freddie Mercury has such strong influences with Uranus and Gemini, which I'm going to talk about, and Virgo, he was very precise in the way that he thought and very exacting, you know. Now, so he didn't have too much trouble with Mercury. Also because Mercury is in Virgo, and that is one of the strongest placements for Mercury. Mercury in Virgo or Mercury in Gemini are the strongest placements. Yes, isn't that crazy, Janae, about our looks, that it manifests? It really blows your mind. And I'll definitely go over more and more examples of that, you know. Oh, I love that too, about radiating brightness. And yes, that'd be so awesome if you can subscribe, definitely. So yeah, so having Mercury in the 12th house, you know, brings this very spiritual but also intuitive aspect to the way that he thought. So I wouldn't be surprised if he got a lot of his downloads for his song ideas or the inspiration for his music when he was connected to the water element. So in a shower or a bath, or even just in dream time. Another artist that's got very strong Neptunian influence, the 12th house is ruled by Neptune. Another person that has really strong Neptunian influence, and interestingly is also a Virgo ascendant, is actually Paul McCartney. And you can definitely see him talking about song ideas he's gotten from dreams. And I think he even said that he liked to do a lot of his like acoustics and recording in the bathroom, where there's obviously a lot of the water element. So it's pretty interesting, you know. So this wouldn't be considered a tight conjunction because this is pretty far out of orb. This is like a 9-degree orb, but the sun and the moon are very important. So it's definitely still important here. But needless to say, he was a very communicative person, right? He liked to be seen, he liked to talk, and we can see that with Mercury and Virgo, Sun and the Ascendant especially. Not so much Mercury in the 12th, because that's like more of a hidden Mercury, but definitely the Sun and the Ascendant. And we're going to talk about some other things too about what would contribute to that, you know. So if we look down here into Libra, I want to talk about some things here. I don't know how long I've been. Oh, there we are. Oh my gosh, I've already been going live for 20 minutes. I can't believe it. The time just like literally whips by. So he has a lot of planets here in Libra. He has Jupiter in Libra. He has Chiron in Libra. He has Mars in Libra. He has Neptune in Libra. He also has Venus in Libra just at the end of it. And he has his Juno here at 0 degrees of Scorpio. So I find this really, really interesting. Well, first of all, always fun when I look at these charts to see why I'm drawn to certain people, because his Venus would be actually exact on my ascendant. My ascendant is, or within 1 degree. My ascendant is at 29 degrees of Libra, so makes sense that I would be really drawn to him with his Venus on my ascendant. His Jupiter would also be considered conjunct my ascendant. His Mars would actually be within a couple degrees of my moon sign, and his Chiron would actually be on my moon. So that's kind of a wounding aspect, not really fun, but these other ones are very fun. So as an astrologer, when I look at synastry, which is two people's charts together, that's what I do. Now I'm reading this because I have my chart basically memorized, but if I was to do a synastry chart, it would actually be like two natal chart wheels. I would look at them at the same time, and I would compare the aspects with it all on the same screen, that kind of thing. So what I find really interesting here is that he's got Jupiter conjunct or together with his Venus. So this literally translates to like big love. And if you understand, if you've watched the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, yes, he's talked about how he's wrote. So I'm not sure what you mean by Jody music. Yeah, I know there's so much to love about astrology and this chart and everything. So what I find really interesting is that his Jupiter is conjunct his Venus. So this literally translates to like big love. And if you've watched the movie, definitely leave a comment if you've watched Bohemian Rhapsody or you enjoy learning about Freddie Mercury or Queen or things like that. But what's interesting is that he definitely went through his own journey of sexual identification where he, you know, had a lot of different partners and tried out different types of dynamics and definitely had a lot of partners over the course of his life. So literally with this Jupiter conjunct Venus, it's like he really did love everyone. You know, you could see it here in the astrology that he just had so much love, and he had love for many different types of relationships because Libra is the sign related to relationships, balance, and beauty. He also would have had a great love for aesthetics and just being in love with love, which I think you can definitely see that through the movie. Now, what's interesting though is that he has his Chiron in Libra as well. So at the same time that he has this kind of big love energy going on, different types of partners, multiple partners, all of these things, he also has his Chiron in the same sign as that. So there's this wounding aspect where sometimes maybe he wasn't able to perceive of the truth in these relationships, or he wasn't able to be maybe spiritually protected, or he could have been hurt. So it's Chiron is like a double-edged sword because it can create healing, but it creates healing through a wound. And if you understand about the trajectory of his life, he had many, many types of partners, and he did actually contract, I believe it was HIV/AIDS, and he unfortunately did pass from that. So I wouldn't be surprised if he had partners that maybe weren't honest with him, or even just not even intimately, but just even friendships or other types of business relationships where people used him, you know, and he had such a big heart. So people kind of took advantage of that. And those were spiritual lessons that he had to learn, you know. Also, this Chiron is pretty close to his Mars, so this could literally be like some type of wound on his masculinity or wounding on the physical body, or even, when we look at wounding on the physical body, it's also like the ascendant or really the ascendant, but definitely some type of wounds going on there, and then all of these planets here are basically in his second house, which is the house of security and stability, self-worth, and wealth, financial status, all these things. So he had obviously great riches, because he's got Jupiter in the second house, Venus in the second house. Venus rules money, relationships. So it's sort of like he had everything that he could want in terms of like material possessions, beautiful things, money, beautiful people. But at the same time, there was always this like wound, that couldn't be fulfilled here, which is really interesting. Now, when we look at some of his other aspects, he has Saturn in early Leo, he has Pluto in Leo. So these actually form sextiles to some of his planets in Libra, because this is fire and this is air, so that's a harmonious aspect. So his Saturn here is sextile to his Neptune within 3 degrees. So this actually gives him strength. Saturn is your work energy. It's the karmic planet. It makes you work hard. So he had to work very hard on his ability to be a leader, his ability to be a creative and an artist, and to be that for society, because this Saturn is in the 11th house, which is the house of Aquarius, which rules groups and communities and society. So this aspect here, in particular, though, the Saturn sextile Neptune, it's interesting. We're actually kind of going through a similar aspect right now, but in different signs. This provides strength and grounding for the spiritual mission. So when it came down to it, even though he might have felt a lot of times a tremendous amount of pressure to be that Leo person to the crowd, he also had this spiritual path, the spiritual purpose that was supporting and guiding him, and with Neptune in the first house, this means that he might have at times not understood who he truly was to people. Neptune creates illusions and this like quality of not always being able to like tangibly understand what that is. A great analogy for Neptune is like, think about sugar and water. When you take sugar, like a sugar cube, and you stir it into the water, it's really hard to discern what's the sugar and what's the water once it's all mixed together. It's like all one. And that's actually what Neptune rules, is that spirituality, that godlike quality, that interconnectivity, that understanding that everything is interconnected and we're all one. It doesn't do well with boundaries, So he may have definitely had boundary issues in his life with Neptune in the first house, where he didn't fully understand his own self-identity, because the first house is the self, the ego, it rules the head. So he might have not fully understood who he was as an individual. And definitely that can also be kind of like a Libra problem too. So he would have identified through everybody else. And that can be a beautiful thing, a very spiritual thing, but that can also sometimes be harmful, because not everybody is perfectly spiritually aligned to be in your best interest. And that's why boundaries are still a good thing, So there's a lot that we could talk about there, which is really fascinating. His moon here is in Sagittarius, right at the end of Sagittarius, and his south node's in Sagittarius. And we obviously have some other asteroids going on here. His IC, which is his ancestry, his roots, is in Sagittarius. I want to skip over here to talk about his midheaven and Uranus, because this is very fun and exciting, and I want to make sure I talk about this. And believe it or not, we're almost coming to the end of the time. So what I love about Freddie Mercury's chart, and this is where I was like, oh, okay, that's where we get the crazy energy from, because I don't know if it's necessarily coming from the Virgo. A little bit for sure coming from the moon and Sag. That can be wild. The Libra energy is fueling that. That's adding air to the fire. We do have the Saturn and Pluto and Leo, so we've got some fire here, air fueling the fire. But in particular, this really stood out to me. So he's a Gemini midheaven. The midheaven is the top of the chart that's related to how you are seen in the public eye. You know, so for myself, for example, I'm a Libra ascendant. My midheaven is actually in early Leo. So part of my work is being seen, is being a leader, is being a creative, you know, and being a compassionate leader and all of those things. So for him, Gemini is related to communication and speech and facts. It's a very fun sign. It rules friendship and just kind of like a flurry of activity. So he was seen as this very like all over the place, very mercurial. I definitely don't think it's an accident that he decided to rename himself Freddie Mercury, because Mercury was a really important influence in his chart. You know, being a Virgo ascendant and Virgo sun means that he's double ruled here by Mercury. And then we could look to, you know, the position of his Mercury, which is again in Virgo, which is a Mercury ruled sign. So very, very mercurial here, but even more so because his midheaven is in Gemini, and that is one of the other ruler of Mercury besides Virgo is Gemini, you know, or however you want to say it, that Mercury rules Virgo and Gemini. The best way to phrase that is that they are linked to each other. They're like one and the same kind of thing. But in particular too, so it's got this Gemini midheaven, which in itself would make him a very like sudden, spontaneous, funny, very communicative, like type of personality in the way he's perceived by others. But his North Node, his karmic destiny, his spiritual path due north was also in Gemini. And not only that, it was in the 10th house, which is the house of the career and the work that someone has to do this lifetime. And then also he has Uranus in Gemini. And this Uranus is in close proximity to his North Node and his midheaven. In fact, his North Node is within 1 degree of his midheaven. So this is a very, very clear mission, coming in with a very, very clear mission. I am here to be a voice. I am here to communicate. And he was that, right? He was the lead singer of this really famous band. He also was a voice for people that were going through similar issues that he was going through, you know, with where do I belong in society based on, you know, his ethnicity and also how he identified, his sexual preferences, so many different things there. He was a voice for that too. So we can definitely see this here, you know, in the chart. And then with Uranus in Gemini, so Uranus is a generational aspect, meaning that there will be other people born at this, you know, in the same year, the same time frame as him that also would have Uranus in Gemini, but doesn't mean that they were born with Uranus in their 10th house and Uranus in combination with these aspects. So having Uranus in the 10th house means that he was able to have this genius quality when it came to work and career, where he could do things that were outside of the box. He could be kind of like very inventive, you know, and he could just come up with these wild ideas. And Uranus in Gemini is a very exalted Uranus, meaning it's really, really strong in astrology, because that's putting Uranus, which is a planet that would prefer to be in things that are more free and loose to like get to kind of all the corners of the mind, putting that with Gemini, which is all about the exploration of the mind and the facts. So this is like a really, really strong Uranus that he has. And definitely, if we look at his career, he was that. You know, he did really non-traditional things with his art, right? So, like, if you, you know, if you take the song Bohemian Rhapsody, it's a very unusual approach to a song, right? It's very long. It has lots of different things, you know, involved with it. It's actually like considered to be like an opera type song. Again, I'm not an expert on Queen, but just, you know, you can see this too in the movie adaptation that they did. So there's so much you could really talk about and look at there with how he really was very inventive and very creative. And it would be interesting to see like if the other band members were born, you know, close in age to him, and did they have Uranus and Gemini too, and like how was that affecting their chart and all these things. This is where astrology is so fascinating, because you can keep going with these things. But I just love, love, love this, because Uranus and Gemini is like wild and crazy. Having a Gemini midheaven is wild and crazy. Having North Node means that his destiny was to support the wild and crazy. So this is like lots of energy around being this like loose cannon and this like wild, really communicative figure. in the public eye, and definitely that's who he was, you know, and you can see that too. If you watch like YouTube videos of him, you'll really see it too, because he's actually, you know, speaking. There's only so much you can pick up from a picture, but you really pick that up even more when you watch the person. You know, this is like really strong Leo vibes, right? And his Saturn in Leo, his Pluto in Leo, and then the Libra brings in strength for that, like the fashion, the beauty, all of these things. So yeah, he has a really, really fun chart, and I just thought he would be a great person to talk about on Halloween, because Halloween's all about being fun and crazy and taking on different masks that we wear and all these things. And I feel like Freddie Mercury is a great example of just having this really wild, like, I don't care energy. That's another thing too about Uranus, is really being unapologetic for your weirdness, you know, and just being like, I don't care that I feel this way, you know, this is who I am, and I'm just going to break the mold, and I'm going to do what I want to do. And you could definitely see that that was part of his career. So that is the Stars with the Stars for Freddie Mercury. So those that made it on the live, thank you so much for watching. Definitely feel free to share this video. If you're watching this on my YouTube, please leave a comment. Let me know that you are here. And definitely feel free to subscribe to my channel. If you're watching this on my Facebook business page, feel free to leave a comment on this video, like and follow me on my Facebook page, and feel free to check out the links in the description of this video if you'd like to sign up for my email newsletter or check out my blog, all those other good things. Send you all so much love, and happy Halloween!